Welcome to another episode of Everything Intellectual Property. Today, we have a very special guest with us. This person has created new technology for textured hair to make styling faster, easier, and more convenient. Please help me welcome the founder of Ritualist, Dawn Myers. How is it going, Dawn?
Hi, how you doing? It's going great. I can't complain.
That's good. First off, I told you off here, the energy is infectious, and just kind of from doing like the Shark Tank reaction video of your episode, it was great to kind of just hear that energy, and then kind of getting you on the call here. It's like, okay, this is real. This wasn't like, okay, just like a Shark Tank thing. It seems like your natural personality, which is pretty cool. So thanks. Thanks again for kind of doing this. And I guess at the beginning, I like to try to get for the audience so they can get an idea of, I guess, the product and what you've created. So can you kind of talk a little bit about, I guess, or describe the product rather, and what does it entail?
Yeah. So I came into the textured hair care space. Obviously, I have a huge head of curly hair, and this is really short for me. So it used to be even bigger and much, much more difficult to handle. And what I realized is that there were a lot of really great liquid products in the market for textured hair care, but there weren't any tech-enabled products, any tools, appliances that are geared toward helping us maintain our textured hair. I mean, if you think about it, all of the tools on the market, except for our product, they're blow dryers, they're hot curlers, they're flat irons, they're all meant to change the structure of our hair. I wanted to embrace my natural textured hair. So how do I do that without so much friction? This process of washing, conditioning, taking care of my hair, it takes me a solid 3 hours start to finish.
Nice.
Yeah. Now that's in 3 parts, right? There's the styling part, there's the washing and conditioning part, there's the drying part. They're pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah, for sure.
Nonetheless, it's very, very time consuming. And I wanted to build a product that could tackle as many of those pain points that we experience as textured hair consumers as possible. So I actually started a family of brands. I have a smaller brand called The Most, where we did just smaller down market resources for people looking for healthier, faster hair care maintenance. And then most recently, we started Ritualist. That's the brand that was on Shark Tank. And our featured product for that brand is the Mint. The Mint is a tech-enabled product that basically heats up your products for you, heats up your curl creams, your gels, and then you're able to kind of essentially, think of it as a Keurig K-cup filled with your favorite products. You pop that pod into your tool. The tool very gently warms and conditions those products, and then you're able to brush those products through your hair in such a way that you're cutting down on friction, which means you're getting less breakage. It cuts down on the time required, so you're saving up at least 50% with that styling step. So you're saving a lot of time. It's super portable, so you can take it when you travel, you can take it to the gym, and you're getting a healthy, fast, healthy result.
Nice. And I by the way, I love the name Mint. Where did you come up with that? Because it seems so fitting.
Yeah. So, we wanted to, we did a lot of studying leading up to this brand. As I mentioned, this was my second brand. This is actually technically my 4th brand in the beauty space. And so I had a lot of time to really think about things like branding theory and naming theory, right? So we think about companies like Xerox, who are first to market with a particular functionality, and their name becomes ubiquitous in the space, regardless of the other kind of tools or solutions in that space. And we wanted to do something similar. And so we came up with this concept of minting your hair. What we saw was all of the customers we would talk to would have a different nomenclature for each of these steps. And we needed to bring a standardized language to the space. And so for that step where we're raking product through our hair and really trying to get that minted, defined look, we named the product the Mint, kind of like a press for your hair.
Yeah. No, I like that. I guess that makes sense. And it's so fitting. And one of the good things I love about doing these interviews is that I get a chance to learn a lot about a particular industry, a particular product. And I know just kind of watching and hearing about 4C, I didn't know what that entailed, and kind of doing some research and like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But it seems like the product, even though it was in I guess you had in mind kind of textured hair, maybe 4C hair, but it's not just kind of 4C hair, but it's for other hair types. Is that correct?
Yeah, so this is your quintessential kind of founder dilemma where you've got a super, super niche group that experience a kind of pain at a really high rate, right? So Black women with type 4 hair, we're really experiencing this pain. However, textured hair goes far beyond 4C, right? There's almost 60% of people in the United States that have some kind of textured hair. So there are lots of people for us to serve here. And that's exactly what you want. You want a founder who understands the discrete pain point and who experiences that pain and who can speak to a niche market, a beachhead target market really, really well, and then build out to that larger opportunity.
No, for sure. No, that makes perfect sense. And I guess one of the things that I guess I also love about just kind of doing these interviews and hearing people's story, because it's not like you get, okay, I was an expert in the hair industry or within the product industry and things like that. And it was typically you're having an issue that you're trying to solve for on a personal level. And the great thing about being able to solve for that thing on a personal level that, 9 times out of 10, other people are having that same problem. So to the extent that you can solve for it, you maybe have a good idea or a good chance of kind of bringing that product or that whatever to market and helping others out as well, which is something that you did. But again, you're typically not in that field that you're finding yourself in. And I know we were talking about offline being a lawyer. So I guess, was it maybe overwhelming for you to say, okay, again, I'm a lawyer and okay, I know you were talking about kind of trying to land something on in DC at the White House or whatnot, but then it's almost like 180 degrees turn with, okay, now I'm an entrepreneur and an inventor and a business owner. So I guess how was that dynamic and was that overwhelming as you were going through it?
That's a good question. And I wouldn't say it was overwhelming. It was really refreshing for me. As I disclosed, in our little kind of pregame chat, I really, really hated the practice of law. I mean, really deeply hated it. No offense. Listen, it's a special breed that can do that work well. It wasn't me. But I got a really great education that really provided a strong foundation for this entrepreneurship journey. I was looking for a way out. I was looking for an exit, right? And so it really just fit. The timing was perfect. And by that point in my life, I had had so much really great experience. I had spent time on the campaign trail and in politics, pitching, constituents. I had spent time in big law on the business side, pitching clients. And so now, you see kind of the fruits of that labor on Shark Tank. Venture pitches are, they're a dime a dozen for me. So, I papered my own, venture deals early on. Did I do it perfectly? No, but I got through at a time where we didn't have a ton of capital to spread around. So I needed, all of that kind of background and foundation to be able to do what I do. As in law school, you're not really learning the law. You're learning how to learn. You're learning diligence. And it's that diligence that I believe has brought us from point A to point wherever we are now.
No, and that's I'll probably say most attorneys, I would probably say 5% of attorneys, maybe 5 to 10% of attorneys really want to do that. I think the rest of us are kind of just looking to do this thing to pay the bills.
That's right.
Caught up, you have a family, you have a mortgage, and because you're making decent money and you get, I guess, caught up in, okay, I have to kind of keep doing this thing to kind of pay the bills. But I would probably say 5, 10% maybe actually really enjoy this or love this. And so, yeah, I would imagine that there's more attorneys out there that, I guess, share your same sentiment in terms of not necessarily liking it. I know you said you hated it, but not necessarily liking a law. And so this is interesting. So now you had this great experience, you have this great education, even though you don't necessarily like it. And now you kind of have this problem that you're solving for as far as the textured hair and coming up with this product. So, and I think this will help, aspiring entrepreneurs who are maybe kind of looking to get off into the entrepreneurship game, business owner, bring their product to market, whatever the case may be. What was that final decision to say, okay, I have this thing, but I am kind of doing all this stuff in politics and whatnot over here, but I'm going to kind of put this to the side and kind of jump in this entrepreneurship thing.
So I'll tell you kind of what the actual roadmap looks like. So I'm in Big Law. I'm on the business side. I am looking for a way out, right? So I'm actually building real estate on the side. I'm finding kind of multi-units or single-family homes in DC to kind of chop up and put back on the market. And I'm doing that. And I'm going to entrepreneurship groups to look for those mentors and to look for real estate investors. But instead of finding real estate investors, all I found was startup, tech.
Really?
Yeah. And, immediately I was very clear that I had found my people. When we first came onto this show, you said, well, Dawn, you have this really specific kind of energy. And my energy just resonates with this space. Not so much in maybe Silicon Valley or New York or maybe Boston, but definitely in those B class, C class cities. If you are in tech, it's not because you're trying to make $1 billion. If you make $1 billion, great, right? But the vast majority of the people in this space are people who have identified a really deep problem that they are somehow attached to and they're passionate about solving it. And those were my people. Listen, that's the reason that I went to law school. I was looking for that kind of passion. But we find people, as you mentioned, who are just looking for the paycheck. And in Big Law, I don't have to tell you what that kind of environment feels like. It's just about billing. It's just about the money. And so I connected to that feeling that I was looking for through the tech ecosystem. And so I really just latched on to the space. I immediately started taking leadership roles in that ecosystem. And, as I'm taking leadership roles, I'm learning what is venture, what is investment, what is MVP, what is prototyping, what is, and slowly kind of put this kind of framework together for myself. So, this was something that it didn't unfold immediately. It very much organically just kind of snowballed and became undeniable.
Nice. So then, and that's amazing to hear. And again, not having a background, and this is another thing that I think will help out the audience, because a lot of times when you're kind of coming into something, you're doing something totally different at that point in time, whether it's a lawyer, whether it's an accountant, heck, maybe a doctor, and you don't necessarily have that design or that engineering experience. So, creating a product, like you said, a tech product, hardware product like you have, you kind of have to have some type of understanding of kind of design, maybe engineering. So I guess as you're transitioning into this, creating a product, are you working with kind of designers and engineers that you're hiring, or just kind of helping plan?
Yeah. And, I think the biggest takeaway from my story is about using what you have. You may not have, listen, I had so many people tell me early stage, and even now, you're never going to pull this off. You're going.
Why did he tell you that? That's kind of mind blowing. I heard you say that on Shark Tank, and I'm like, I don't understand. Why would somebody tell you that? That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I got to be honest. I understand why they said that now that I've gotten into it. I have an obsessive personality, as a lot of lawyers do, right? So I came into the space. I knew that there was a there. I was completely myopic, and you could not veer me from the course. However, now that I'm in the space, I get why people said that. Tech-enabled hardware is statistically nearly impossible. Only 3% of tech-enabled hardware companies even make it to market.
Wow.
Much less grow and exit and do all the magic things, right? So we have really overcome a lot of statistical barriers to entry. Tech-enabled hardware takes a lot of money. We've done this very leanly, but a concept like ours really should have something closer to $3, $4, $5, $6 million in funding to do the kinds of things that we want to do. We've raised 1.4, 1.5, right? So, and on top of that, there are only about 100 Black women who've been able to raise over $1 million in venture funding, right? Wow. And so statistically, I should not be here. Those people, even though I was really peeved by their inability to see it, I understand why people were trying to give me real talk. The reality is the statistics in the space are impossible. So yeah, I got a lot of people who told me that I'd never be able to do it. But we have to use the resources that we have. And what I had was a legal background, a deep understanding of this consumer and her problem, a slightly creative mind, right? I do a lot of creative things, ballet and, painting and all those things. That very much came through in this process of iterating and just thinking creatively about how to solve a problem. I had, again, the legal background. I had, after law school, I spent some time in China. I spent some time, kind of learning the manufacturing game in China. And that's a whole long story, but long story short, I didn't do what I went to China to do. I went to China to do this whole big thing. Didn't quite pull that off, but I got enough context and I got enough context to be able to come home and build this product. When I came up with this idea, I knew who to go to. And those people did my early stage prototyping. And from there, when we had an MVP and a functional prototype, then we were able to fundraise. Then we were able to commercialize. Then we were able to get on Shark Tank. Then we were able to get those celeb investors that rocket ship your company, right? So this is very much an iterative process. It does not happen overnight. I've been in this game for 7 going on 8 years, something like that. I don't even know anymore. And so 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Yeah. So it's been a very long time coming. It does not happen quickly. There's a lot of learning. So you have to find something that you're deeply, deeply passionate and committed to.
And I love that. I guess out of curiosity for myself, what is it about tech-enabled hardware that makes it so difficult, that makes it so statistically impossible to kind of bring to market?
There's so many pieces. So let's start with the intellectual property piece. That's what we discuss here, right? Intellectual property is really, really expensive. It's an opaque space that a lot of people don't understand, right? And so with a lot of people, they either don't get intellectual property, they either aren't getting the protection, and then they're putting their product on the market and it gets copied. And then those Chinese or offshore manufacturers are able to produce your thing at a lower cost. You don't have protection and you're kind of undercut, and it's just impossible for you to compete. That's one scenario. Listen, it's very difficult for people to think through IP strategy. I was really interested in business when I was in law school. So all of my classes were business related. A lot of those classes were related to intellectual property. And so listen, I had a wonderful patent team, but that team did not understand textured hair, did not understand women's tools, didn't understand the kind of logistics around what it makes sense to cover, what it makes sense to prioritize, what's actually going to make us competitive in this space. And so there was real thought partnership, again, putting that legal background to use around how to strategize and how to prioritize coverage. Then on top of that, we went back and forth with USPTO for some time, and they kept, telling us, nope. And it wasn't until I got on the phone and I made the argument that we're actually able to pass muster. And so, it goes to, yes, I have a legal background, but even if you don't, just being able to be diligent and understand your thing with such nuance that you are able to add color and provide thought partnership with your intellectual property team, that can be really, really valuable.
No, and again, I love everything that you just said, just because I thought this was a perfect segue, because I was going to get off into the IP part of it next and what made you decide to protect the intellectual property. But I love what you said, because I look at as a patent attorney and IP attorney as like, that is the foundation. If you have kind of a bad foundation, then the house is going to crumble or have issues. But to the extent that you can protect from a business standpoint, you can protect that IP and have it protected the right way early on. It makes things, I don't want to say easier, but it helps out in the long run. And it seems like that was something that for you at the beginning, you guys got right, or the team got right, and you kind of made sure of that. And it was a benefit to you.
Yeah. And listen, IP doesn't protect you completely. Having the patents doesn't protect you completely. You still have to be strategic about what you share and who you share it with. We've absolutely had some really big companies rip off some of our designs, and they've come at it at slightly different angles to kind of eschew our intellectual property coverage. And so it's a game, right? We can't afford to, file everything that we'd like to file. But you have to be strategic about how you think about, again, prioritizing those filings and kind of think about building that moat gradually around your company. But that's just one thing. That's just IP. There's so many other pieces of this puzzle that make it really difficult. The logistics piece, really hard. The engineering piece, really tricky. You need to start out with an industrial engineer who really understands for a product like ours. You need to start with an industrial designer who understands ergonomics and that customer's experience, what the weight is going to feel like in their hand and how the weight is going to be distributed and all those kind of like really important UX factors. But when you start to think about design for manufacturing, right? When you transition your design from your engineering team to your manufacturing team, well, that's a completely different game, right? Now we're thinking about economy. What's going to be the easiest thing to assemble, to manufacture? What kind of changes do we need to make this viable for the manufacturing floor? That's a completely different design. And so you're spending a ton of money with engineers, then you're spending a ton of money with manufacturers. Then things inevitably go wrong. Right now, as we speak, I am in the midst right before this meeting, right after this meeting, I'm in emergency meetings because we've had a dock strike all throughout the East Coast and Southern coast of the United States. Well, that completely disrupts our supply chain. Well, now I have to come up with communications for our customers so that they don't burn me at the stake. And so there are all of these, there's a chain of impossibilities, right? Very high, very difficult, high barrier to entry and very difficult to overcome obstacles in the tech-enabled hardware space that make it difficult to operate in. But here's what I will tell you. It's still really important. If you have a really good solution, you still got to pursue that thing. Here's why. The barrier to entry is extraordinarily high, but everyone is terrified of this space. And so if you get there, you're going to be on a runway by yourself for at least a few years until everybody catches up. And that is invaluable. It's not like a makeup brand or a soap brand or a liquid product brand. Anyone can come out with something that's competitive if they have the right marketing language. But here, it takes real prowess and it takes real guts to get over those obstacles. But once you get there, you are in a league and a class of your own.
No, I mean, and I love everything that you just said again, because again, I almost at this point in my life, I don't necessarily want to do something that the barrier to entry is low to even get into, because again, to the extent that that's the case, it's saturated at the beginning and whatever the case may be. But to the extent that you have something that's a higher barrier to entry, you can kind of break through it. It seems like now you can kind of get really rock and roll, and
that's right.
like you said, at least a few years before people will kind of catch on. And I think I do want to kind of go back a little bit to what you were saying about, I guess, intellectual property and the fact that do you have IP elsewhere? Because I know you talked a little bit about maybe manufacturing in China, and I would imagine that you sell this thing in other countries. And from a strategy standpoint, which you also talked about, I'm always at the mindset, okay, where are you manufacturing? You may want to look to get a patent there, or obviously the U.S. ends up being one of the bigger markets, but maybe it's another market internationally that's important. So you maybe want to get a patent there. Are those some of the things that you thought about? I would imagine, yes, for you and your team to kind of also seek protection in.
Yeah. So early on, because here's the thing, as you know, there's kind of a statute of limitations that may or may not be the right.
Especially abroad.
Right. And so you have to be really strategic, because early on, you probably don't have a ton of funding yet. You may. I hope you do. But if you don't, you have to figure out how to make that whatever bucket of money you're able to get stretch. We got like a $20,000 grant early on. And so I had $20,000. I knew I was going to put it toward intellectual property. What can I do with that $20K? And as you know, the answer is not a whole lot. And so we decided that we were going to focus on protecting our product in the markets that we wanted to sell, not in the markets where we wanted to manufacture. Why did we make that decision? Many of the countries that are offshore that have big manufacturing regimes really don't respect the kind of patent regime, right? So, China doesn't care that you have a patent. Even if you do have a patent in China, they don't care that you have a patent in China. And so it's really difficult to kind of make that have legs for you. You always have to think about the fact that you can have the intellectual property, but do you have the money to defend it? Right. And so, the fact of the matter is, we were thinking, we need to protect our intellectual property via strategy in the markets that we're manufacturing through relationships, right? So use manufacturing partners that have really, really deep relationships with our offshore subcontractors. And that relationship ensures that you're going to be protected, right? Because that manufacturer, if they're doing enough business with your point of contact, they don't want to spoil that pipeline by doing something nefarious. And so that's how we've decided to kind of, protect ourselves abroad. And also with supply chain the way it is, you don't know where you're going to be manufacturing. You may start off in China, you may move to Bangladesh, you may end up in Mexico. You don't know. You have to figure out kind of where your customers are, where shipping from is going to be most economical, right? And so if you waste your money on a patent in China, well, you don't have money for the patent in Mexico. So to us, we just really focus on relationships with respect to manufacturing to stay protected. And ultimately, our intellectual property is protected by brand. The faster you're able to grow, the more eyeballs that you're able to get, the more excitement you're able to get around your brand. That's ultimately what's going to protect you. We have to do the foundational work of filing IP and making sure that we're, again, building out that moat that keeps other people from being able to usurp your ability to make your thing, right? So that's really foundational. But the real work here of protecting our IP is building a brand and building a brand quickly.
No, and again, you're exactly right about that. And obviously trademarks and things like that coming up play again. I know I talked about the Mint and really loving that name, but I even like the name Ritualist and think that's a pretty cool name. So then I guess maybe fast forwarding a little bit, what was the decision like? Obviously it was a no-brainer, especially if you have an opportunity to go on Shark Tank and really get the product to the masses, the millions of people who watch that show. But how was that process? Did you get an opportunity where, some people, the producers of Shark Tank reach out to them and say, hey, come on, or other people, they have to kind of reach out to the producers and kind of go through that process? How was your experience kind of getting that opportunity? And I guess, what was the process like for you going through it?
Yeah. All of this is strategy, right? Like there are people who just organically get on Shark Tank, but there are, again, really insurmountable odds here. The statistics are something like 40,000 people apply to Shark Tank every year. 150 people are selected to film in California. Only half of those actually air on TV, right? And so, listen, you can rely on luck if you want to. You can rely on being a good company if you want to. There are a lot of good companies that are out there. Ultimately, it's strategy. It's knowing exactly what time to apply, right? When are you right? When do you have enough controversy to make you to give yourself some traction on the show, right? We weren't super late stage. We had just started selling when we went on to Shark Tank, but that was where the tension lied. We knew we had a really great product. We knew we had a really good story, but we also knew that there would be some tension on that show, and that's what they're looking for, right? So we could have waited until later, until we had $1 billion in sales, but not only would that have not had as much tension, it also wouldn't have made any sense for us, right? If you have billions of dollars in sales, you don't need to go on to Shark Tank and take a deal for $150,000 for 20% of your company. You don't have to do that. So there was that piece. And there's also the fact that I had been in the game at that point for 7 years. And so I knew a lot of people. I knew folks who were connected to decision makers. None of those people can confirm or deny the extent to which they helped me get that spot on that show. But I'm very confident that they were very instrumental in me getting a spot on that show.
For sure. And it seems like, I just love the way you kind of, your outlook on, seems like obviously business, well, maybe even to a certain extent life as well. And maybe that kind of is going back in the political realm of things, or maybe you were like that before, as far as you're looking at things really from a strategic standpoint and saying, okay, what doesn't make sense? Does the timing align? And you're kind of really trying to make decisions based off a strategy, which you don't hear that often, or at least it's not, I guess, explicit, where obviously we know business has a fair amount of strategy in it, but you're very like upfront about it, where a lot of people don't at least talk about it in a way that you do, which is cool to hear.
Yeah. And, so much of this becomes intuition, right? I think for a lot of founders, it's in there. You're always kind of grappling with all of these variables, but there's so many things that are intertwined. You're just kind of going with your gut, but your gut is informed by strategy.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. And I was going to ask about that, because you had mentioned on Shark Tank, as far as $1 million went into the production or the prototype and the test and all that. How and again, hopefully this helps the audience, the viewers, you know, to the extent that they don't have, I guess, deep pockets or $1 million, or maybe they don't have, it seems like you have again, just kind of from the time in politics and kind of, you know, being able to kind of go through that, some friends who maybe can, you know somebody who knows somebody. And I guess to the extent that someone doesn't have those friends or those deep pockets, how can they maybe, I guess, take advantage or try to, I guess, come up with money for their product for you know, to start a business? Because I think that's, I mean, I don't know, I think that's a very practical and helpful thing that.
Yeah. So I didn't have friends, right? So my friends were lawyers, but here's the thing, lawyers be struggling too. So, you know, when you're trying to like build a family and send your kids to private schools, you don't have $50,000 just give your friend to build product, maybe, right? And so, you know, I didn't have a ton of capital to go on. I'll tell you about my funding journey. As I mentioned, right, I had been building real estate on the side and started going out here and looking for mentors, and then fell into tech. And once it became clear that I had something and that this was the way that I needed to be going, I actually liquidated that real estate and put it behind the company, and liquidated my 401k and put that behind the company. And so it was really tough for a really long time. You know, I was self-funded for a while, and then I did, in venture, kind of in this kind of investment area, in this investment sphere, there's a kind of roadmap to investment. Your first round is called your friends and family round. Yep. Then you do what's called a pre-seed round. Then you'll do a seed round. Then you do a Series A, and so forth and so on. This funding kind of journey is indefinite. But those early stages, people usually think about a friends and family round. And for a lot of folks, particularly in the tech-enabled hardware space, they're looking at a couple $100,000, if not substantially more, for their friends and family round. The reality is, for Black tech and for Black entrepreneurship, we don't have that. Our, you know, families can't do that. And so we have to be really creative and lean about how we do this. So instead, if you go around early stage in DC 10 years ago to your friends and family and say, hey, there's this product that I want to build and I'm going to turn it into $1 billion company, they're looking at you like you have 7 heads and asking them for money. They're going to look at you like you're crazy. And so, you know, one of the things that we talk about, I do a lot of teaching at Black Girl Ventures and a lot of ecosystem organizations where we teach people how to break into the space. And what we tell people is meet people where they are, give them a framework that is familiar to them. And for us, that framework was a party, right? So we did a party and we just kind of, talked about the business at the party and asked people and spent that entire party educating people about, we called it a launch party, but we spent that entire time educating everybody in the room about this space and what we were doing and about what it looks like to be an early stage investor and about why it's so important to learn this space because it's such a great, potential builder of wealth that a lot of Black communities are missing out on, right? So from that party, we were able to get something like, I think we got $7,500 in investment. That's not a ton, but if you give $7,500 to a Black woman, she gonna stretch it and stretch it. Okay? I stretched it.
For sure.
I stretched it.
I love that.
Some interns and I put up a website and I did a whole bunch of little things. But those little things got us into the accelerators who would give us $25K, who would give us $30K, who would give us $50K. And those little grants gave us the, between my money that I had already invested in the company, between that family and friends round, between that accelerator and grant money, I was able to cobble enough together to get to MVP, minimal viable product. That's the key to being able to go out and now get real venture investment. Then I got a $150,000 check. Then I got a $250,000 check. Then it spiraled on itself, right? So this is very much, like I said, an iterative process. It does not happen overnight. We have a lot of people who come into the space and they say, I need $1 million for my thing. And you may, but not today.
Right.
You need $500 to pay somebody to design your website. That's what you need. So what we have to think about is what you need to get from point A to point B right now. Raise for that. Raise it by going to friends and family. Not only do we get $7,500 from that room, I also made very concrete asks of people. Hey, you work for Walmart. Do you have some friends who have some marketing expertise or who understand retail? Give me 10 hours of their time. Hey, you run an accounting firm. You don't understand this space and you're too risk averse to invest right now. But can I get 10 hours of your time to kind of look at our books and get us off to a good foundation? So it's not just about asking for money. It's also about understanding what your actual needs are. Right. And asking for people to fill in those holes. This is not going to be smooth. If you are a person of color, if you are a woman, this is not going to be somebody just writes, you do a deal on a napkin, those stories that you hear about venture. You just do a deal on a napkin and all of a sudden somebody gives you a couple $1 million. That's not how it's going to work for us. It has to be iterative and you have to be very clear on your needs. Your job as a CEO is to bring in the resources that your company needs. That's your whole job. And we do that iteratively and really targetedly.
I love that. And I guess, let me ask you this, how much of, because again, you're saying you're selling real estate, you're liquidating 401k, and it seems like at least, to someone like me, it's like, okay, she's all in. So how much did that help you when you were raising money at every level, whether it's family and friends or whether it's from venture capitalists? Did that help out to say, okay, she's all in? So, because it seems like people kind of like, okay, she's not even all in and kind of investing money. So why should I invest $5,000, $500, $50? Like, did that help?
Yeah, it helps. It's definitely something that investors want to see, but more importantly, it helps you internally, right? Like the way that I saw it, I just put my entire life behind this thing. I understand that the statistics are not in my favor, but we're going to have to figure it out because my entire financial future is riding on this working out. So, it really did. And that's why investors want to see you invested, right? They want to know that you're motivated exactly the way that I was motivated.
For sure. And you talk about strategy a lot and being strategic. And I know a lot of times, kind of going back to the Shark thing, did you have an idea of, okay, this is who I want? I know I don't even think, maybe they tell you guys right before you guys go on as far as who's going to be the sharks, but did you have an idea of, okay, which shark I probably want to be a strategic partner with? Because it seems like at least on the show, I want to say it was Mark and Emma, and did that, like, okay, were those two people that you were eyeing out from the beginning? Because it seems like you're very strategic in terms of kind of what you're doing with all this. You're not doing it. But I know some people, I've interviewed some people who went on the show and they're like, hey, we had to pay these bills. So I would have did a shark. I would have did a deal with any shark. I wasn't worried about what particular shark is I'm going to do a deal with. We had to pay the bills and we needed money to do that. It seems like in your case, that's kind of maybe not what your approach was. So did you have an idea of, okay, Mark, he'd be a good partner, or Emma, she'd be a good partner? Was that kind
absolutely? Yeah, I probably spoke to, I don't know, at least 25 people who went on to Shark Tank beforehand. And that, information gathering, whether you're doing a crowd fund, whether you're about to start investing, whether you're about to go on Shark Tank, really important, right? To just talk to the people who've done it. And so I had a really good sense of what the run of show was going to be. I knew that the, panel rotates. So there are 3 people who are on every episode and then everybody else switches out. I understood kind of how to think about who might be in those other 2 chairs. And so I had a bunch of scenarios. If it's this panel, then I'm going after these 3. If it's this panel, then I'm going after these 3. For all of the variables in the room, so there are 2 seats where you don't know who that's going to be. For all of the variables that I thought might be filling those seats, I did a deep dive on their background, on how my story might resonate with theirs. And I had a discrete talking point for every single one of those people. So you don't get to see the entire Shark Tank kind of pitch. As you know, it gets cut. But what you didn't see is that throughout my kind of time with them, I am speaking directly to their lives. I'm saying, hey, Mark, how I know that Mark loves his kids, right? So I say, Mark, what would it be like if when your kids were younger, you just did not have the tools and ability to take care of their personal care? What would that have felt like for you, right? It was, as I think people did see on the show, having that personal connection to Lori and saying, hey, Lori, you're the reason that this happened. This idea came from an episode that featured you, investment that you did. And so having a personal connection, you guys saw early on in my pitch, I suspected that Emma might be on my panel because she was a really great guest star of last show. And I know that they like to pair folks with people who have synergies, and we have so much synergy. And so I worked Emma into my actual first 90-second pitch, right? Hey, I saw you at that Beyonce concert, girl. And it starts a relationship. All of these things, business is personal. It's about relationships. And so a lot of people go into that show and they say things like, Mr. Wonderful is so terrible. Mr. Wonderful was wonderful to me. He asked what he thought were hard-hitting questions. They weren't for me. They were softballs. But nonetheless, once I gained his confidence, he was advocating for me with the other investors on that stage. It's relationships. And so that Shark Tank pitch was a blast. I've never had more fun in my life. I'm having so much fun right now just reliving it. It was great. Nice.
It seems like, just for you talking about it, seems like, a lot of times people kind of think back to a time period and it's like, oh man, it's deja vu from a negative experience, but it seems like yours is so positive. You can hear it as you're kind of reliving it and talking about it. So I guess let me ask you this, because again, business is, and you've talked about it ad nauseum as far as it not being like a linear thing. It's almost like a sine wave where you have the ups and the downs. And again, talking about, as we speak, you have issues on the East Coast with shipping and things like that. What would you say, a two-part question, what would you say is the biggest breakthrough of the company, as well as, I guess, the biggest challenge up to this point that you had to kind of overcome?
I mean, I think the biggest breakthrough was actually getting product in customers' hands. Again, only 3% of hardware companies actually get their products to market. And so that was a massive milestone for us. And it was one of those moments where all those people who were like, I don't know if she's going to be able to do it. Literally, some of the people who said to me, you are going to fail. Now their funds are on my cap table, right?
Life comes full circle. And that's, I guess, the crazy thing about it is, again, just know today. And again, I'm big into real estate. I have real estate property, and just kind of calling people, cold calling. And man, just because they say no, I don't look at it as a no. It's like, okay, not today. It's some point down the line, they maybe change course, because life happens and things happen in their personal lives. They're not a seller today. They may be a seller tomorrow. If they're not a buyer today, they may be a buyer tomorrow. So just kind of keeping along with that mindset. Just because someone says no, it's like, okay, that's just not today. And that's kind of how I approach it. And it seems like that's how you approached it as well. But it has to be a sweet feeling when someone said, like, this is impossible, no way. And then later down the line, it's like, here's my money, take it. It has to be a pretty good feeling.
Well, let's not overstate. They didn't say, take it. I still had to fight for it, but I got it. And,
go ahead.
Yeah. And, you answered, you asked kind of what the biggest challenge is. Yeah. And there's so many challenges, as we've discussed, but I think our biggest challenges are logistical and also personal, right? They say, and I'm finding this to be very true, your company can only grow to the level of your own personal development, right? And so what you will find, and what I'm sure you have found along this journey, is that, entrepreneurship has a way of pulling up every issue you have ever had to the surface. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be a childhood thing. It can be a trauma that you're working through. It can be this shame issue or this procrastination issue. Whatever it is, it's going to be magnified by 100. But now your entire livelihood is on the line and you have no choice but to clean it up. And so all of those logistical issues that we have, those are related to my own personal issues. Am I shying away from making some hard decisions about who we work with? Am I being diligent enough, or am I getting paralyzed by the just kind of like bigness of the task in front of me, right? You have to work through those issues to break through in your business, whatever that business is.
So it seems like you're saying, hey, on a personal level, you kind of have personal development and improvement, because that's going to carry over into business at some point and could affect the business. And that's interesting, because I hadn't thought about that. But it definitely makes sense, because if you're a hard decision maker, or you don't make the decision from a personal standpoint, how are you going to make, decisions in a business and when really people lives kind of depend on it or whatnot. So I guess that's a pretty good take that I hadn't heard, but as I'm thinking it through in real time, it's like, okay, yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's interesting. So I guess maybe to kind of close it out with last two questions here. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs? I know a lot of times for someone who may be playing a double dutch game, it's like, okay, do I get off into the game? Do I not get off into the game? It seems like you have that obsessive personality. Is entrepreneurship only for people who have that personality type? I don't know. I'm always, the way I look at it, and it's not like 30, 40 years ago where you're going to work for a company for 30 years and kind of ride it out until retirement. It's almost like you almost have to have something else going on. I guess whether you're in a day-to-day in that business or just investing as a silent partner. And I guess you should definitely take a look at both, kind of come to that decision on what's best for you. But as far as people who kind of want to get off into the entrepreneurship game, but like I said, they're double dutch and then maybe not. What advice would you give to that person to?
Absolutely 100% jump. Absolutely. You make, listen, you make like 90% of small businesses fail, right? Like the statistics are not in our favor. However, a failed business is not a failure, right? Like you may fail at your business may not go on indefinitely, but you're going to learn so much about yourself by going through this process that here's the thing. If my business were to go under today, it will not. However, if it were to go under today, and I were to go back into the workforce, I was a beast before. I cannot imagine what I would be now, right? Because I understand the space from a different place. I was an employee before. Now I've been the boss. I understand what that boss's, what their priorities are. I understand what incentivizes them. I know how to negotiate because I know what resonates with me. I know it's going to resonate with them to get the best pay that I can get. I know what it is to be a true asset to a company, right? What it is to identify problems in an organization and proactively take them on and streamline them and bring value to a company. I've seen what it is to be a really amazing employee and a mediocre employee, right? So, and as I've mentioned, the level of self-work that I've had to do just to get to this point has been tremendous, and it doesn't stop. And so I am a better person for becoming an entrepreneur. And I cannot imagine a situation where you go through this process and you make as rational decisions as you possibly can, and you don't come out better for it. There are people who come into the space, and here's the thing. I did some wild stuff. I sold 401k. It was wild. It was very risk adjacent. However, and I don't suggest that other people necessarily take that route. That was extreme. However, generally speaking, if you are making good decisions, can you end up in financial turmoil or hardship because of this? Yes, but you also get the skills that allow you to pull yourself out of that hardship very quickly.
No, and I love that. Audience, you heard it first. To the extent that you're kind of playing this double dutch game, definitely jump in it. And I guess it seems like the way I think about this thing, hey man, we get one life, and at the end of this thing, you're not going to be like, okay, I'm mad or angry or sad that I did this thing, even though it didn't work out. I think on the flip side, you're probably going to feel, if anything, man, I should have done this or I should have done that. So to the extent that you do it, and to your point, and to the extent it doesn't work out, I would imagine that as you're towards the end of your life, you're going to be glad that you did those things, even though it didn't work out, as opposed to didn't do those things. So
absolutely.
So yeah, I'll add that. And then I guess the last question is, how can people follow you? How can people purchase the product? So can you maybe answer that?
Yeah, thank you so much. You can follow me personally at Dawn Does the Most on Instagram. Actually, all of my socials are the same. Twitter, it's all the same. So Dawn Does the Most, and that'll actually lead you to Ritualist, our brand. So if you look at kind of my bio, that'll lead you to our brand pages. And I would love if you guys could follow along. I talk a lot about these kind of lessons in that content. And you can buy our product at ritualist.com, but that's RICH, rich as in kind of expensive, RICHUALIST.com.
I love that. And I guess curiosity, kind of based on kind of being able to get the product only on your website, is it like, again, just understanding that you think about things from a strategic point, to like maybe not selling on some of those other e-commerce platforms such as Amazon or whatnot? Is it, I guess, how do you approach that and think through that? To say, okay, this is on my website as opposed to kind of making it available to this wider audience?
Yeah, so a few things there. Amazon can be tricky, right? Amazon's really good at trying to protect people's intellectual property, but they're not perfect at it. And so one of the things that we know from talking to a lot of other brands is that as soon as you put your product on Amazon, people start to steal it. Yeah. And they start to replicate it. And that's really, that we're not ready to be able to overcome that hurdle. So we want to be thoughtful about that. We are thinking about, wholesale and retail and what other opportunities make sense for us. But here's the thing, early stage, again, we don't have a ton of resources. And so you have to know when you get your product in Target doesn't sell through for you. Target is expecting you to route people to the store and sell for them. And so you have to have enough marketing dollars in-house to be able to do that effectively, or that relationship is going to be a waste. And that is a massive, massive commitment and investment to go into a big retailer like that, right? You're going to spend at least 100, and that's on the shorts, on the low side, at least 100K, like getting set up for a Target, right? So you want to make sure that you have the money for it. You want to make sure you're in a position where you're bringing in enough revenue where you can get the institutional capital to be able to support those POs. And you want to make sure that you've built up the cultural capital in your brand to be able to sell through. So all things that we are working through in real time.
No, well, man, I definitely love that, man. This hour or 50 minutes flew by. It was amazing talking to you, and audience, definitely go follow her. When this interview comes out, I'll definitely put those the website as well as kind of the social handles in the description. People can go follow you and check it out and purchase the product. Ultimately, audience, hey, you had your pens and your notepads out, has taken notes on this one. Like I said, I can listen to you talk all day. It's the energy is amazing there. But again, until next time, audience, you guys take care. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. Peace.